Well, hello, everybody. As Peter said, I'm the editor of Impact Investor, and I'm just going to take this opportunity. If you don't know Impact Investor or you are not reading us yet, please check us out. I believe we write the stories that you want to read about. And we are a fairly new publication with a very European focus. So please check us out and come and say hello if we are staying for the next couple of days. And that's my introduction. One job, one hat, that is me. So whereas you, William, you have a lot of hats, you wear a lot of hats in terms of what you do, not just as an impact investor, but also all the organizations that you are part of. Perhaps we can start with a brief introduction of the many hats you wear.
Oh, my many hats. Thank you very much, Paula. Lovely to be here. I think seeing the question we're going to talk about, one of my most relevant hats is that I'm founder of War Child. I founded that at the age of 23, an organization that works for children in war zones worldwide, and obviously active today in Ukraine. I ran the organization for 15 years, and then we were 900 people in 13 countries, and it was too big a job for me, and I handed it over to a great successor, and I'm still vice chair of the board, so it's still very much part of my life. And I wanted to continue my impact focus in creating more entrepreneurial impact and supporting social entrepreneurs in growth, and I founded the Dutch Social Enterprise Network, which is building an ecosystem for social entrepreneurs to have access to amongst others, capital. And I think the ecosystem has been around for almost 10 years now, or 10 years this year. We won the best ecosystem of Europe last year, so Social Enterprise NL. So we're quite proud of what the Netherlands has achieved from an entrepreneurial impact aspect. And in the access to capital, I founded Rubio ImpactVentures, a Dutch venture capital fund, impact fund. We actually link all our investments to quantifiable impact to our carry for 100%. And we have 150 million under management. And this is my main job. And then there's a few other hats, I was chair of the National Advisory Board for Impact Investing for the last 2 years, building an ecosystem for impact investing. And we released a great report about the status of the Dutch impact investing ecosystem just yesterday, so please check it out. And then I'm on the board of 22 Colony, an impact company, and of Veronica, which is a company that invests in independent media, which is also very relevant in the discussion we're having about Ukraine.
So just to start, why don't we focus first on the work that you are doing, or that you've been doing for so long with War Child, which is in our discussion about the response from investors or from the impact sector to conflict. Will be more like the philanthropic view.
The philanthropic approach. Yeah.
So how do you deal with an issue like Ukraine? And when I say that, is that you're already overstretched with all the wars and conflicts happening in the world. So what has been the response in the last few weeks and your priorities?
Well, I think the response to the war in Ukraine has been amazing from a philanthropic point of view, and for organizations like War Child, but many with us, UNICEF, Save the Children. I mean, we were not prepared for the war in Ukraine, like nobody was. If you look like Syria a few years ago, we knew this was coming. We were ready in Lebanon, and to be able to support refugees in Ukraine, we have to scale up very, very fast. And most organizations had no capital available for an additional war. As we have in many other war zones, we need to continue to work every day. War Child is in Romania and Moldavia at the border because those countries have least capacity themselves to give support. Mm-hmm. And the NGO sectors are not as strong. And we do emergency psychosocial support at the border for women and mostly children. And not just the ones that have just come in, but also try with mobile units to visit them where they've been picked up, as there's a lot of child protection issues and also female protection issues of people that have been picked up and are not safe in the spaces where they are today. So it's a huge crisis in that sense that we need to respond to, and we need to scale up. And which is very different also from other crises, is that now maybe many of you in this room as well have taken in Ukrainian families in other countries, and many families in the Netherlands are struggling in how to deal with traumatized children in their homes. So figuring out how to support Dutch families, English, American, just how to deal with this situation, something we haven't come across in the last 26 years of giving aid to war-affected children. So it is something that it needs a lot of scale up and a lot of extra additional investment. And luckily, there has been a lot of money flowing towards this crisis. But it's going to take much more, I'm afraid.
And in terms of capacity, because obviously everyone is being very, very involved and willing to donate, big donors, individual donors. But in terms of capacity, how do you cope with in terms of people that are?
Yeah, it's training people. Yeah. So it's not that we bring in Dutchies or people from Western Europe to do all this work. We train local NGOs. We train local people that are used to working with children. In how to give support. We do online trainings for people within Ukraine in how to work with children. So the COVID has given us that advantage. There's a lot of online support mechanisms that we have developed that we can now roll out also within Ukraine. But setting that up is still quite complex.
Still on the philanthropic angle, of course, dealing with the humanitarian crisis and finding homes for refugees and protecting children is like the first wave of response. But obviously, the war in Ukraine and other wars kind of ask for a broader view of the problems that we might be facing in other parts of the world that are already affected by war, but they might be affected by famine. So
now this is one of my main points I've been pushing for, and this is not so much war child, and I think it's very relevant for investors as well, is that we have a huge famine coming at us in East Africa and Middle East. I mean, there has been a lot of trouble in getting people at least one meal a day in the last year during the COVID, and because of climate change, the new droughts in Eastern Africa. But now with the crisis, the price of wheat has gone up with 63%, the price of soy 30%, the price of fertilizers is 300%. So it is impossible to afford food, and it's becoming very, very difficult to produce food at a reasonable price. And people that are most vulnerable are the ones that are going to be hurt most by this crisis. And these are large groups of people in East Africa and the Middle East. And we need to think of all kinds of mechanisms to make sure there's food production going towards these regions, because we will have a huge famine, which will lead to other political unrest, because people will rebel. And so this is something we need to be aware of. It's not just in Europe. It's not just dealing with all the million people, the refugees, but it's also dealing with the side effects of this war, which is much larger than Europe.
Moving from this to the point of the view from an institutional investor, obviously the response is a more long-term thinking of what is happening and what are the long-term consequences for portfolios. How do you see that? What do you think the response for institutional investors should be? Not to just the Ukraine crisis, the Ukraine war, but we are coming up from COVID as well. So it's crisis after crisis.
It's complex, of course, because we really don't know how long this crisis will last. But for one, and is of course that had been discussed a lot, divesting from Russian governmental bonds, from companies in Russia that are more than 50% state-owned. That is, I think, something we can do, and I know it's quite difficult now to sell Russian assets, but money is still also flying into to Russia. So it is, how do we stop this money stream going in, and how do we disinvest and further destabilize the Russian government? I think that is just, for me, a very important element. Another important element is investing in clean tech. I mean, we need to, I mean, the panel that was in front of us before the break made that very clear, but it's also now we need to diminish our dependency on gas and diminish our dependency on Russia, which means large accelerated investments in clean tech solutions. And so I feel that is something that institutional investors have a large role to play in accelerating that movement. And if we look one step further, it's about making sure there's going to be money available for rebuilding Ukraine, infrastructure, schooling, hospitals. We're talking about just homes. And this is expecting that people will be able to go home. We will also potentially, if this is going to take much longer, need investments in infrastructure in Western Europe to get homes for people where they can stay, to create jobs. So I think there's a lot of reconstruction investments needed. And I do believe in the long run, Ukraine has it in itself to become a successful economy. I think we've seen in former war zones how former cities in former war zones have become tech stars of the future. So I also see opportunity in rebuilding that. It is humanitarian, but it is also really important for Europe that we make sure that Ukraine gets rebuilt and that we have money available for that.
As an impact investor, so maybe first you can explain a little bit what are your main focuses at Rubio and what are the main themes you invest in, and then maybe explore whether that is changing at all as a response to the crisis that we are seeing.
Now that's our current portfolio is not getting a lot of changes due to this crisis that's happening. We are investing in companies that are trying to create impact in circular solutions, in healthy living, and in people power. And I think all three elements are huge challenges in our society that we need to continue to invest in. So I don't see any different, that we will not change our investment strategy because of this crisis. We believe that those elements are crucial for rebuilding an inclusive and circular economy. So we are experiencing, by the way, we're not fundraising, so I'm not here to raise funds for my fund, just to make that very clear. But we do see that we need to accelerate investments in some areas. We're actually getting in quite a few requests from Ukrainian ventures, asking for capital and asking for relocation, whether we're willing to invest and help them relocate, something we're looking into actively. But we've also invested in a company called Skill Lab, which is a company that has an AI algorithm in an app for skills for people that don't have a CV, like most of us in this room will have, that can't show what kind of work experience they have, but have a lot of skills that are relevant if they move country, where they could find jobs. It could even be if you've taken care of your kids or coached the soccer team. Those are skills that are relevant to find you a new kind of job. And matching these skills with jobs is what Skill Lab does, and they have this in 32 languages. They've used it in the Syrian crisis and in South America. So this is something we hope to have active for Ukrainian refugees soon, so we can match them to jobs in the countries where they are today. So some of our portfolio companies are able to help. But in general, I just think we need to keep doing the other work. Please not stop investing in other crucial parts of our economy that need transformation during this crisis.
There was one, you mentioned a study that the Netherlands Advisory Board on Impact Investment did yesterday, which we wrote about in Impact Investor. And there was a bit of a warning of missing opportunities, that the Netherlands might be missing opportunities to create impact or preventing the growth at the scale that it should be. What do you think are the main barriers, since you just mentioned that we shouldn't stop thinking about investing in this way because this is what is needed?
Well, the Netherlands has always been a front runner, but like our punchline, we're punching below our weight. We could go a lot faster than we're going. And for us, that's an important role with institutional investors to double their assets in impact and to get to a minimum of 10% of all assets in impact in 2025. That's one of our main points of advice. We see there's a lot of regulation that could change, that could help bringing more assets to impact. So there's also a call to action to the government. But we see a very positive development, but we just see it could accelerate a lot faster. And we also see that the money is not going equally to all SDGs. And some SDGs are definitely underfunded, and we see a lot of need to create more funding for those. So I just advise you to read the report and prompt most institutional investors in this room to step up the game, because I think we Dutchies could be a front runner if we step up our game.
One last topic that I would like to touch on is what you mentioned about this fund, Veronica, that supports independent media, which is actually so crucial and so important at times of conflict. And we are talking about all these journalists in Ukraine, but also in Russia, having to go elsewhere to be able to carry on sharing news with us. So
Yeah, this is a Dutch investment fund and also philanthropic agency called Veronica. It comes from the old Veronica TV station, but now we're linked to the media company. And we invest in independent media. And in the last month, we've really stepped up our investments in both a Ukrainian independent media platform to support Ukrainian media to be able to continue to bring news from the country, which has become very, very difficult. And then the investments are just about anything from relocation of teams to loss of equipment to being able to continue to bring media out of the country. But equally important, or maybe even more important, is trying to support independent media outlets in Russia, trying to get news into Russia, which has become increasingly impossible. Actually, today, the newspaper has claimed that Novaya Gazeta has actually stopped publishing today. This Nobel Prize winner that is the founder of this, one of the last independent media outlets, has found it impossible to continue to publish, so they've decided to stop publishing altogether until this, they're not using the word conflict, ends. Another one which is really important is Medusa. Medusa has been one of the independent media outlets from Russia for the last, since 2014. They've already been they've been designated foreign agents by the Russian government in 2021, which means that every article they would write, underneath it would say that they were a threat to society, which meant that most of their sponsors left. But then the interesting thing was that their readers, because there is an active reader base, started donating to keep them alive. So they have a large donation base, and they've relocated to Asia and Europe. But because now the financial systems, payment systems are no longer working, they can't get their donations anymore. So now they also need funding to continue to be able to create news. And of course, their website is down, because that's what Putin has done. But they are reaching their followers with email, and with things like Telex and Telegram and all kinds of creative ways of bringing news to their readers. So I believe these kind of initiatives are also crucial to support in solutions we're looking for in this crisis. And this is what the Veronica is doing, and I could talk about that for another half an hour, but I'll leave it at this.
My last question, and is there is nothing positive that we can take from what is happening in Ukraine or other conflict zones in the world, but what do you think, after another crisis following COVID and now this, with the huge cost to the economy and the social challenges that it presents, how we learn anything from this, or is there anything positive to take in terms of building a better economy for the future?
Every crisis has that opportunity in itself, and I think, for me, one of the trends I see that might happen is that we're moving towards more deglobalization, where both COVID and this crisis have shown that a lot of trying to bring your production to the cheapest labor countries and across the world with huge footprints as a consequence are now deemed complex. So if we would have this trend of deglobalization, that could mean there's also an opportunity for a fairer economy with more inclusive jobs that are well paid and with less loss of biodiversity and less less consequences for our climate. So I do see that we have an opportunity there of rethinking how we could build those value chains in a different way if we have to change them because of these crises. And of course, we don't know whether this will happen, but I always do believe we need to think how that could, and as we will be, hopefully after the crisis in Ukraine, putting money into rebuilding that country, let's please rebuild in a sustainable way and try to use all the investments that we will be putting in and have them well, I don't need to explain to you what we need to do there, but I believe that's a very important element where we can all contribute to a change of a more circular, inclusive economy with the money that will be pushed into the country after this conflict, which is hopefully very, very soon.
We literally have 1 minute left, and I don't know if there is one question or two. Originally, we weren't going to have questions.
We weren't going to have questions,
but,
yeah.
You know, 50 seconds.
No, I think we should give time for the next speakers.
Thank you so much.
But thank you very much for your time and listening to this subject, because I believe everyone feels it in our gut that there's something happening that feels so far away from all of us sitting here in a luxurious hotel in The Hague. And I'm just happy that it's something we can also discuss here. So thanks very much for putting it on the agenda.
Thank you
Peter
very
and
much.
Thank
Pierre.
you so
Thank you
much.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
Thank you, Paula.